Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today in this video, I am going to be discussing all of the books that I read in the month of June 2021. So this month was a bit of a wild ride. I read 4 of the books from my TBR, DNF'd one of the books from my TBR, one of the books on my TBR, Becoming by Michelle Obama. Ooh, here's the dust jacket. I'm still reading this. And then I also read 3 books that weren't on my TBR. So, in case you can't keep track of all of that, I read 7 books and DNF'd 1 for a total of 2,620 pages read. My average star rating this month was 3.64 stars out of 5, so now let's dive into all the books that I read in the month of June. The first book that I read in June was Sparkling Cyanide by Agatha Christie. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. A year ago, Rosemary Barton died under mysterious circumstances, and now, a year later, Rosemary's widower is gathering everybody who was in attendance at the dinner where she died, and they are going back to the same location to hopefully find out who killed Rosemary. I ended up giving Sparkling Cyanide 4 stars because I did like it. And like with most Agatha Christie's, I really just breezed through this because I think they're fairly easy to read and I always want to know what the ultimate resolution to the mystery is going to be. I did like this, however, it was not at the top of my favorite Christie's. I think it was good, but not great, and it's definitely not as memorable to me as some of her other works. Honestly, I don't remember what my theory was when I was reading this book. I do remember that the ultimate resolution was not exactly what I was predicting, so it's not like I saw the ending coming. Granted, with Agatha Christie's, a lot of times you have such a small cast of characters, so if you're somebody who wants a huge, shocking, oh my god, I never saw this coming twist, you're not going to get that most of the time. Overall, I thought this was a good book, but it's not my favorite Christie that I've read, and I'm already starting to forget a lot of the specifics, so it was good, but not the most memorable mystery I've read. Next up, I read Pieces of Her by Karen Slaughter. This is my second Karen Slaughter book that I've read after Pretty Girls, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I'm going to be intentionally vague when describing the premise of this book because it really went in a direction I wasn't expecting, and I don't want to unintentionally give too much away. The basic premise is that a young woman named Andrea Oliver begins to question how much she really knows about her mother Laura after they are involved in a near-death experience during a mall shooting. I gave this book 4 stars because I did like it overall. It was very fast-paced, but I definitely think it leans much more into thriller than mystery. Often the publishing industry just calls things a mystery thriller, but a lot of times you have mysteries that aren't thrillers and thrillers that aren't mysteries. I think this book is definitely more of a thriller because as we follow Andy on this journey to find out about her mother's past and we have flashbacks to a former timeline, I think 90% of the reveals in this book are very easy to figure out. It's not that mysterious, and I think if you're paying attention, you can definitely tell what's going to happen. Generally speaking, I prefer books that lean more towards mystery because I like to be surprised and to not always know exactly what is going on. However, if you're the person who would rather read a fast-paced thriller than a slower-paced mystery, this is, I think, a good book for you. I will say there were some reveals towards the end of the book that I actually did not see coming and that I was surprised by. So it's not like I knew everything that was going to happen in this book by any means. Pieces of Her is going to be adapted into a TV series for Netflix, and I would be willing to check that out whenever it is released. Though, considering how book inaccurate the adaptation of The One was, who knows how closely they will actually follow the story. I also believe, like they did with The One, they are not advertising this as a mini-series, they are advertising it as the first season, and that makes me nervous because are they just going to completely change the storyline and drag it out, hoping that they can make more money that way? I don't know, Netflix. I'll give you a chance, but I'm suspicious. Next, I read The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. Don't worry, the trend of me giving everything 4 stars in this video is going to end really soon. This is an adult fantasy novel, the first in a series that follows Nari, a con artist living in historical Cairo, who accidentally summons a djinn when she is in the middle of one of her cons. After that, this djinn whisks her off to the legendary City of Brass. One thing that I appreciate about this book is that as we learn more about the conflicts between the different groups living in Daevabad, the City of Brass, we see that throughout their ongoing centuries of conflict, it's not necessarily black and white. It's not like, oh, these are the good guys and these are the bad guys. Both sides have done things that were extremely wrong, and it's not so clear-cut about who's on the right and who's the aggressor in the situation. And I think that was good because in real life, in wartime, there are atrocities that are committed on both sides, so I appreciate that this was a little more nuanced than some fantasy novels where it's just very clear-cut good versus evil. Now, one thing you may know about me if you watch my wrap-ups is a lot of times when I'm reading books, especially young adult and or standalone novels, I don't like the romance. I say that I thought it was underdeveloped, I didn't buy into their love for each other, I couldn't root for the relationship. This is not one of those times because I actually enjoyed the romantic storyline going on in this book. Believe it or not, I actually really do enjoy romantic plot lines if they are developed correctly, and I think there was a lot to love about the romance that was going on in this book. And maybe I'm biased because it had a lot of tropes that I personally really enjoy. When Nari and her love interest first meet, they don't see eye to eye and they bicker a lot. A trope that I love. You know, he wants to keep her safe and she's like, I don't need your protection. And then eventually they sort of start to depend on each other, and you see them beginning to respect each other as they learn more about each other. There is a moment where she thinks that something bad has happened to him and she realizes, oh my god, I have feelings for him, I need him to be okay. Another trope that I just absolutely adore. So I actually liked how their relationship developed. I would say I think they kissed way too soon. It was within the first 300 pages, maybe less, the two of them kissed for the first time, and I think that should have been later in the book. I think it would have been more satisfying if we saw more of their bickering turn to begrudging respect, and then after hundreds of pages of fighting their feelings, they finally acted on their mutual connection. I think it would have been better had that moment been left until later in the book so that that sexual tension could have been further explored. And the last thing I'll say about this book is the ending went to places that I was not expecting at all, and I don't know how I feel about it because it seems like this series is going to start going in a different direction than I anticipated. I think there's a new love interest being established. I don't know how I feel about that. So I would be interested to read the second book in the series and see what's going to happen next. Now for possibly my most controversial opinion of the video, or maybe not, because there is another really popular book I read this month that I did not like. So one of my most controversial takes of the month, and that is I DNF'd Not That Bad Dispatches from Rape Culture, edited by Roxane Gay. I couldn't finish this book. I don't remember exactly how far I made it through before I decided not to finish it, but this was, in my opinion, a massive disappointment. I am definitely in the minority on this because so many people talk about how profound and stunning they think this book is, but I didn't like it. I want to be sensitive as I review this book and explain why it didn't work for me, because this book is an anthology that includes many people's personal accounts of their rape or sexual assault or harassment, and I don't want to tell them how they're supposed to tell their stories. I'm only speaking to why I, as a reader, did not like this collection, and this is just one opinion. Again, clearly I'm in the minority on this because so many people loved this. I just didn't get the same things from it that other people did, and that's just a personal opinion. First of all, this book is subtitled Dispatches from Rape Culture, and I wish there had been more of a discussion of the cultural aspect. I think that was really lacking, and if you're going to put the phrase rape culture in your book title, I think that should be addressed in some significant way. A lot of the pieces in this collection felt extremely fragmented, and I think a lot of the pieces began to repeat the same ideas, and so after a while I kind of just felt like the same points were being regurgitated over and over. I think there really wasn't any cohesion in the volume. I think a bunch of people just all wrote what they wanted to write, and then they were put together without much thought about the progression and what ideas they wanted the reader to leave this book with, if that makes sense. Okay, moving on now. The next book I read was something that was not on my TBR, but that I really wanted to read. That was Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars. Malibu Rising follows the Riva siblings, Nina, Jay, Hud, and Kit. And tonight, Nina is having a huge party at her house that she has every year, and by the end of the night, secrets will be exposed and the house will end up going up in flames. We also have flashbacks to the relationship of the Riva siblings' parents, Mick and June, and their lives growing up, why they ended up having such a close sibling relationship. I overall really enjoyed this. Out of the 3 books by Taylor Jenkins Reid that I've read, I would say this was probably my least favorite, but I still gave it 4.5 stars. I enjoyed it so much, and while I did have a few minor issues with it, overall I thought it was a great read and I really enjoyed it. Once again, TJR made me feel emotions. I didn't cry like I did when I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but she did hit me in the heart sometimes, and I really just think she does a great job at making me care about her characters and getting me emotionally invested. Now, like I said, I did have some very minor issues with this book. One stylistic choice that I didn't love is that the scenes at Nina's party will jump back and forth from the siblings to a bunch of the guests at the party that night, and it was at times a little off-putting and confusing. At first, when we started jumping to the point of views of these random guests, I didn't know what to make of it. I was like, am I supposed to know who this person is? Why are we following their perspective? Does this matter? And it really didn't. A lot of times I just wanted to get back to following the siblings because they were the characters that I cared about, and this random surfer or actress or model or agent at this party and their exploits just didn't interest me as much as the main characters. Also, the blurb for this book makes it seem like this fire that gets started at Nina's house is a big plot element of the book and a big mystery who set the fire. And the ultimate reveal of how the fire started was super anticlimactic and disappointing. So I feel like the publisher shouldn't have built that moment up as much as they did. I do think the ultimate resolution was a little bit rushed in some aspects, so I was not 100% happy with certain elements of it, but all in all, this was a really good book, and I worship at the altar of Taylor Jenkins Reid. That's all. Okay, now it's time for Jackie's next unpopular opinion that might get people to unsubscribe from her. And the next book I read was The Night Swim by Megan Golden, which I gave 2 stars. Yeah, this book was a huge disappointment, and there were a lot of things I hated about it. This is a super popular book on BookTube, and I don't get it. I don't get why so many people like this, because it was kind of bad. It was kind of bad. So, The Night Swim is a mystery thriller, or at least in theory, it's a mystery thriller. It wasn't that mysterious or that thrilling, and the book follows a true crime podcaster named Rachel who comes to this small seaside community to cover an ongoing rape trial for her podcast. And we also get the perspective of Hannah, a woman who wants Rachel to look into the death of Hannah's sister from years before. Though the death was ruled an accident, Hannah is adamant that her sister was murdered, and she believes that Rachel's the only person who can help her. Why she believes that, I don't know, because Rachel is, in my opinion, kind of a terrible podcaster. From very early on in the book, I found it eye-roll inducing how Rachel's podcasting abilities were described. This is only the 3rd season of her podcast, and she is a household name. As somebody who loves to listen to true crime YouTube videos and podcasts and such, there is no true crime podcaster who is a household name. Secondly, we find out that in the 1st season of her podcast, Rachel re-examined a case and got a man released from prison because she was able to find evidence that he was innocent. Not only is that ridiculously unbelievable that she could do all that by herself, but secondly, let's be honest. Do you think the police are going to go back and reopen a closed case they got a conviction on because of the word of one woman with a podcast? I mean, come on, the police are incompetent as hell, okay? And they're not gonna do that, all right? Why would they? It is also incredibly surprising to me how many people liked Rachel as a character because she is boring. I read this book, and if you asked me what I could tell you about Rachel, it's relatively little. I don't know what she likes to do. I don't know what character traits I would use to describe her. She's just a nothing character, to be honest. And it also really bothered me that the victim in this rape trial is completely underdeveloped as well. I could empathize with her situation, obviously, but her as a person was not developed at all. I don't even know if she ever had a single line of dialogue in the book that wasn't her on the witness stand. And I just feel like if you're going to write a book about this rape trial, the victim should get more attention than she actually does, because her as a person was not developed at all. I'm not going to talk about all my other issues with this book because I do have a Goodreads review where I explain those more in depth, and I also have optional spoilers that you can click on if you have read this book or, you know, you just don't care about being spoiled. So go check out that link down below for more of my thoughts. The other thing that I will say is the reveal about what actually happened to Hannah's sister, Jenny. The second that the person who murdered Jenny first appeared on the page, I thought to myself, I bet they did it. It was just super obvious to me. So after reading and being totally disappointed by The Night Swim, I wanted to read some more mystery thriller books. The first of which was The Mother-in-Law by Sally Hepworth, and I thought this book was a little better, but not by much. I ended up giving it 3 stars. Lucy has always had a complicated relationship with her mother-in-law, Diana. One night, the police come to Lucy and her husband Ollie's house and tell them that Ollie's mother, Diana, is dead. They believe that she has committed suicide after being diagnosed with cancer. However, the autopsy finds that Diana never had cancer, and the investigation soon shifts towards murder. This book was fine. It wasn't awful, but there wasn't anything great about it either. I really didn't like Lucy as a character. She often got on my nerves, and I think the ultimate resolution to what happened to Diana was pretty obvious. This book also includes one of my least favorite thriller tropes. It is a trope that you see sometimes in thrillers that I find a bit insensitive and offensive. Also, after the reveal about what happened to Diana, everything is wrapped up really quickly, and I kind of just thought to myself, well, wasn't that convenient for you? It was just super disappointing in the end. I don't think this book was necessarily bad. There wasn't anything that I thought was really awful, but was it good? Not really. It was just okay, and like 6 months from now, I'm like not going to be thinking about this book at all. So it was all right. Finally, I read The Last Flight by Julie Clark. This was one of my 5-star predictions, as was Malibu Rising, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. We began with 4 stars, and we're circling back to 4 stars by the end of the video. Claire is the wife of an upcoming politician. However, what nobody knows is that Claire's husband, Rory, is abusive. She decides that she needs to get out of her marriage. So when she's at the airport and she meets... Shoot, I forgot the other woman's name. What's her name? Oh my god, I'm having like a total... like my brain just coming up empty right now. Eva! Her name's Eva, okay. She meets Eva at the airport, and the two of them come up with a plan to switch plane tickets. However, the plane that Eva was supposed to be on, that was originally the flight Claire was supposed to be on, crashes. So now Claire's in a predicament. She's stuck in Eva's house with Eva's identity, and she doesn't know what to do now. The entire country believes that she is dead, and now she is stuck living in Eva's life with Eva's secrets catching up to her. Wow, I can't believe I said a total brain fart in her name. It just went out of my mind. I found the concept of this book so compelling, and that's why I had such high expectations for it. I will say there were 2 reveals in this book that I did not see coming at all, and one of them I really should have, because in retrospect, the signs were clearly there, but I didn't see it coming, and I kind of hate myself because I should have known, but I didn't. I did not give this a full 5 stars because I think the middle of this book was really slow going. I wish they had picked up the pace a little bit and maybe introduced some of the reveals a little earlier so the ending could have been more developed. I felt like the ending was a little bit rushed, and there is a reveal in the very last chapter that I think it's going to be a hit or miss for readers. Personally, I was disappointed with the last chapter and how this ended, but I also think there were a lot of other people who really enjoyed that, so it sort of depends on your individual taste. I didn't love that part, but other people did, so it's very subjective. Overall, I found this to be a fairly decent slow burn mystery that addresses domestic violence, and while it is not going to be one of my new all-time favorites, and it was a bit slow in some parts, I did enjoy it overall. So everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. Those were all the books that I read in the month of June. I know, some hot takes in there. If you have read any of these books, let me know in the comment section, what did you think of them? Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. I post new videos every single Wednesday. My social media links are down below if you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an awe-inspiring rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you in the next video.